Good afternoon. Let's see here. Let's make sure we are operating here properly. There we go. Good afternoon. Let's see. There we go. All right, perfect. Good afternoon, everyone. I am so excited to be here this afternoon here in sunny Phoenix, Arizona. And probably many of you all are on the East Coast, so it's evening for you. But good afternoon and good evening, and welcome to the I Remember Her Roundtable event. I'm Christina Sanford, and I am going to be facilitating tonight's conversation as part of some of the work that I'm going to be doing coming up very soon with women in leadership, and just with people who are seeking to improve their lives, their work, and their relationships. I have a power-packed experience waiting for you on the other side of this introduction. And I wanted to just have you guys who are on, it looks like we have 13 people on right now. I want to introduce to you the panelists and have them share a little bit about their own stories. But before we do that, we're going to do some housekeeping here now. If you are joining us by Facebook Live, you can feel free to comment in the comment section below. If you have questions during the live roundtable discussion, you can place those in the comments below. If you want that to be private and need it answered privately, you can email your questions to connect@ChristinaSanford.com. That's connect@ChristinaSanford.com. Your answers will be fielded and they will be answered privately if you do not want them answered online tonight during our online conversation. And let's see if there's anything else in terms of housekeeping tonight that we need to do. Let's see, no. So before I get started, I want to throw out a poll. Tonight, we are not doing an electronic poll because that function isn't working very well tonight. But I do want to hear from you all of the participants tonight. And the question that I have for you for tonight, remember our conversation tonight is on why and how inner child work can transform your life, your work, and your relationships. Why and how inner child work can transform your life, your work, and your relationships. And so I want to start with a poll, the first poll of the night. And that poll is the question, this is the first question of the night. Do you tend to care for others easily, yet you find it difficult to care for yourself? Do you tend to care for others easily, yet you find it difficult to care for yourself? And that's a yes or no answer. And so I want to see in the chat what people's responses are to that. I'll repeat the question again for the poll. Do you tend to care for others easily, yet you find it difficult to care for yourself? I'm just curious to know how you all are responding to this. I see Shirley Jones on tonight. I see Janiza McMeans. Hi, Janiza. Tammy Mafat is on, my old neighbor. Yes, welcome to the roundtable. Do you tend to care for others easily, but you find it difficult to care for yourself? Maisha Scott, hello. She says yes. Sharna Ganaway says hello. T. Martin, yes. Taryn Farahai, yes. I'm hearing yes from most of our participants tonight. And so we're going to hold that in our parking lot as we move forward with tonight's conversation. And again, tonight's conversation is about inner child work. The I Remember Her Roundtable and our participants tonight, we will all be having an intimate conversation about how inner child work, if we do it, can transform our life, our lives, our work, and our relationships. And so without further ado, I want to introduce the panelists, because this is what I'm most excited about tonight, is that the panelists are people, women, who not only are doing the work in their own lives, but that they're helping other people do theirs. And the most exciting part about this is, for me, I'm a psychotherapist by profession, and I've been practicing for 22, going on 23 years now. Seems like a long time, like forever. But what I notice is that there are a lot of clinicians out there who are doing work with others, and they haven't done their own work. And so what we see inordinately is people who are in helping professions, therapists, nurses, doctors, and other people in the helping profession, while they're there to tell and help and pull other people along on their journeys. When you walk into their homes, or if you could be a fly on the wall of their mind, you would see that there was a lot of pain and unresolved trauma that they're carrying around with them, and that negatively impacts their lives, their work. Yes, your work, even if you're an expert in your field, if you haven't done the work, there's work still to do. And their relationships, marriage is falling apart, parent and child relationships that are disjointed. All of those issues can point to unresolved trauma and undone work. And so that's what we're going to talk about today. Thank you for the poll. Maisha says, hi, looking forward to the roundtable. Yes, I'm so glad you're here, Maisha. And I'm glad all of you all are here. And I'm going to go ahead and share, starting with, let's see here. Here we go on our roundtable participants. Oh, I can't wait to introduce you all to these wonderful and amazing women. We're going to start tonight by introducing Monica O'D. Monica O'D is affectionately known by many as Moni Love. She is the epitome of character, and she loves to love. That is who Monica is. She knew at an early age that love was essential. And she also realized at the age of 6 that it was not palpable nor visible in her own life. Monica is an experienced human resources specialist with a demonstrated history of working in the nonprofit, medical, and higher education industries. She is skilled in conflict resolution, cultural competency, and organizational management. She is a strong human resources professional with a Master of Business Administration focused on human resources management. Monica not only chose a career of helping others with their professional careers, but she also spends time working with youth at her church, the homeless ministry, and her girls mentoring groups in the city of Baltimore. Yes, she is in Maryland, which is my second home. I love that area. Monica is passionate about breaking generational barriers and healing relationships. Monica began her journey of healing in 2001, and she continues to grow both personally and professionally. She's a mental health advocate, encouraging others to love themselves and begin the journey to a better quality of life. Monica wants to help not only break personal generational patterns, but also the mental health stigma deeply rooted in her community. Understanding your past and loving yourself through healing is the greatest gift one can give themselves. Welcome, Monica O'D, to the I Remember Her Roundtable. We're glad you're here, Monica. Next, I'm going to introduce Lindsay Young. Lindsay is a licensed professional counselor, currently specializing in the treatment of eating disorders. She has extensive therapeutic experience at all levels of care. She understands the various challenges people need to overcome to live fulfilling lives. She's trained in multiple modalities and believes people can heal, grow, and change. Lindsay has a gifted ability to connect with her clients and support them through their healing journey, and I've seen that firsthand. When she's not working, you can find her at home with her amazing teenager and her beloved German Shepherd. I want to say his name, but privacy. Welcome to the I Remember Her Roundtable, Lindsay Young. Thank you, Lindsay. And then finally tonight, I want to introduce to you and present to others, Shannon Martin. Shannon is a licensed master social worker and has been practicing for 20 years. She offers an insightful approach to clinical therapy by offering a non-judgmental eye to see her patients and a discerning ear to hear them in ways they may not have ever been seen or heard before. Shannon is skilled at asking the questions that lead her patients to uncover truths about themselves and their relationships. She seeks to move her patients beyond surviving into a life of joy and fulfillment. Shannon walks alongside her patients as they ask the questions and discover the answers that heal. Shannon's private practice, Ask the Wise, is located in West Bloomfield Hills, Michigan. Welcome, Shannon, to the I Remember Her Roundtable. And I'm gonna go ahead, let's see, and 1 second here. Let me see. I'm just gonna transfer some of these. Okay, there we go. All right. So now that you know who is before you, who we're talking to tonight, who we're engaging in this intimate conversation with tonight, again, intimate conversation, tonight is not going to be an experience that is clinical, directive, instructive, and sterile. That's not what we're going for tonight. Lindsay, you look afraid. So those are the things that it's not going to be tonight. What it is going to be is an intimate conversation amongst human beings, talking about their own experiences and sharing the value of the work that they've done in their own lives and the value they see in doing the work that could benefit you as well in your life. And so I want them to share their own personal journeys. And we're going to start with Shannon. Shannon, can you share with us a little bit about your own journey to recovering, reclaiming, and rescuing your inner child?
Well, thank you for the introduction, Christina, and thank you for sort of paving the way around it's going to be intimate and not as sterile. So I have to sort of switch out of my... You can't hear me?
Now I can. Go ahead.
Okay. Well, thank you for the introduction is what I was going to say. And now following your instruction around not being so rigid and sterile and clinical. I got to sort of switch up my own responses for that. So my journey is long in terms of where it is I've traversed through to where I am now. Clearly, I've had clinical training for more than a couple of decades at this point. Of course, that sounds hard to say that as well. So I absolutely have been knowledgeable, engaged in the work, providing assistance and service. But when you ask that first question on the poll, do you find it easier to care for others than yourself? You know, for me, that's a resounding yes. So always the caregiver, always the person assessing the needs of those around me and rising to meet them. It wasn't until much later, I would say maybe just a few years ago, that it really began to dawn on me that my priorities had been sort of out of whack. So most of the energy was being extended to prioritize the needs of others. And if this is me and my needs, then they're being minimized. And so that really got me to refocus and to do some real work. So my childhood trauma story is centered around some abandonment. My birth father was absent from my family and from my rearing. I had my stepfather in place to provide that love and connection. At the same time, there's been loss. And so I minimized my loss and my needs. And so with that, I lost my voice and wasn't able to articulate what it is that I needed. So for me, the inner child work was really just centered around me finding my voice and being able
Absolutely.
to properly put the priorities where they were for me, you know, actually come forward, not be needless and wantless, actually have needs, preferences too, right? So, you know, this journey that I'm on, because I do believe it is a lifelong journey. These are the things that have been revealed to me thus far. Does that speak to that, Christina, or your?
It very eloquently speaks to it. I wish we had more time to go more into it, but it's sufficient for what the audience needs to know, that while you have done some of your work and are continuing to do the work, that it is a lifelong process, and that it began with you acknowledging that there were needs that were unmet in your family of origin, and that your origin story, while it was picture perfect, it was still, there were still pieces of it that were disjointed and disconnected from the eyes of those looking on, and that juxtaposition between that and what was actually going on in your family of origin. And so thank you for sharing that and that part of your story. And I'm sure there are so many people who can relate to that. And now we are going to go to Monica O.D. She's going to share. Will you share with us, Monica? It's so interesting because while I know you all's stories, I want the audience to be able to hear how it began, how the inner child work became a need for you in your adulthood once you began to look back and say, okay, I'm hurting. There's something wrong. Something's not right. Can you share with us your journey, Monica?
Sure. And I also want to thank you for inviting me to be a part of this awesome discussion. My journey started, as I mentioned in my bio, I was really young, and I say I owe it to God. I'm not sure how at such a young age, I realized I was lacking love. I mean, it is a basic need. So I realized at an early age, there was something missing. And throughout my childhood, similar to Shannon, I had abandonment issues, and I also was dealing with verbal abuse throughout my home. And many people, maybe more people become aware now, of course, but sometimes when you say verbal abuse, it's been said to me, oh, that's just verbal abuse. But verbal abuse is just as bad as physical. And so throughout my childhood, I dealt with that. And so that created low self-esteem, being insecure all throughout high school. And it wasn't actually until I went to Oakwood and developed a friendship with the group that I joined that kind of brought me out of my shell and taught me some things about sisterhood. And I have a sister, a biological sister. We're a little there's some age difference there, but we're very close. But this was a different sisterhood amongst friends. And for me, my journey started as far as trying to do the work and getting answers by reading books, like self-help books about relationships and things that I should have received as a child. But it wasn't until I finished college that I knew I had to move out of my home in order for me to grow. And I remember a statement was made to me before I moved out that I needed to stay and support the family and that I was abandoning the family. And my younger sister said to this person, no, she has to go so she can heal. So even my younger sister realized that that would be the beginning of my journey, was to leave the place where I was experiencing these things. And so I made a plan, I left, and shortly after moving out, I began my first session of therapy. So between books and therapy, that's what helped me transition to begin my journey. And as you mentioned, continue my journey. And it's been quite refreshing along the way, even though you have to experience some of the, pains of going through the memories, but it's very beneficial to have started that journey.
Thank you so much for sharing that. And
You're welcome.
I love that you shared about what the response was when you were ready to differentiate. Or for those listening to the Facebook Live, when we're talking about differentiation, that just means being able to separate yourself emotionally from your family of origin and your primary caregivers in a way that supports your growth and development moving forward. And so it doesn't mean leaving necessarily physically your family, but most humans have a hard time differentiating unless they leave the home of origin. Some people can do it if there's a more healthy situation, but the fact that you had the courage and the forethought and understanding that you needed to leave in order to grow, that is profound. And the fact that you did not answer the call to guilt that said, you need to stay and support look, you're abandoning us. No, I'm not, I was betraying myself staying here. So now I'm going to honor myself by moving forward.
Yes, definitely.
Yeah. Thank you for that, Monica.
You're welcome.
Now we're going to go to Lindsay. Lindsay, share with us a little bit about your story around rediscovering or discovering your inner child, where it all started, and what was the point at which you realized in your life, hey, I need to do some work?
Yes, absolutely. Well, I have a couple points that I've needed to revisit this, have had the opportunity to do that. I think definitely when I felt the calling to be a psychotherapist was when I realized if I'm going to be in the room and facilitate healing, I do need to do my own work and prepare to meet people in that space. So that provided an opportunity, of course, through my early education in my undergrad and in graduate work, of course, which really just, it woke up that desire to learn myself and grow and really just heal, grow, change has been the message from early in my life to just continue that. I think part of my story is identifying that I am such an emotionally sensitive person. It truly is a gift. It did not always feel that way. And it was definitely not received that way in my family. So there was some neglect of some of those emotional needs, and kind of learning that that was not a burden, but that was a blessing that I could bring into my life, into my clients, into my family, in my future. And so really doing that work provided me to be able to reframe that for myself, which was such a gift. I think a part of a part of the work that I'm doing now that I get to, revisit inner child work is through my decision to adopt my daughter, who was a teenager. So that decision has really provided, again, opportunity to really investigate my family of origin, and sincerely. The biggest inspiration comes from the bravery and willingness of my clients, who are so inspiring, that do the work that I get to witness and facilitate every day. So I'm truly lucky to do that work, and it inspires me, continues to inspire me to do my own.
Yes, yes. Thank you for sharing that, Lindsay. You're the story again that I want to go deeper into, but we're going to keep moving forward. That'll be for another roundtable discussion. I want to share a little bit just about where I am and where I've been on this work. I began going to therapy at the age of 22, and it was a lot of cognitive work where I was always up here, which is my forte. I love being up here in my head, cognitively and intellectually explaining things, describing things, naming things. But the work that I had not done and thought I was doing was the heart work. I didn't realize that I wasn't doing heart work until about 7 years ago, when I hired a new therapist in Las Vegas who took me through some very powerful experiences in going back into my family of origin, back into my childhood, back into looking at my trauma from a different perspective and acknowledging the child that was in those experiences, acknowledging that I was a child who did not have her needs met by everyone in my family of origin, by all of my caregivers. And so with me recognizing that just 7 years ago, now you guys remember, I've been practicing now for 22 years. It was that far along in my journey that I was doing a lot of cognitive understanding work, cognitive behavioral work, but not a lot of sensory work, feeling work. So that happened to you. And about that, I feel that work didn't begin until 7 years ago. And so in my family of origin, I experienced emotional neglect, as well as very complex codependency with my one of my primary caregivers. And that created in me a desire to really do some work so that I could get beyond where I was at the time, which was being very reactive, making decisions unconsciously. Oh, well, why did you do that? I don't know. It just happened like that. Well, were you thinking? No, I wasn't. I was just doing. What did you think about? No. Did you feel? I don't know. It just happened. And so what I realized over the years and what I realize now, I am a woman who believes that before my creator made me, he envisioned me. And before he envisioned me, he knew that I was coming. And before he knitted me together in my mother's womb, before he formed me, he assigned me a purpose and a calling and a destiny. What's so amazing about my creator is that as he was forming me, and even before he did, he knew where he would place me, that I would be placed in a family of origin that would qualify me for the calling he had placed on my life. And so what I am realizing over these last 7 years, and more specifically over the last couple of years in my life, is that while I have experienced trauma and I have experienced emotional neglect and I have experienced all of these things, those barriers are actually what qualify me to do the work that I believe I'm called to do today. It was the barriers, it was the pain, it was the years of not really understanding who I was. It was the years of me being a mouthpiece for many people in my family. It was me speaking up and saying what nobody else had the courage to say in my family of origin, and sometimes getting shut down because I was talking too much. But right now, those barriers are now my qualifying indicators. Those are the things that authenticate my calling. And it is that way, I believe, for everyone who is placed on this earth, whether it's for you, God, your creator, the universe, whoever that is for you. If you believe you were created and didn't just land here from nowhere, then you believe that there was an intelligent design for your life. And for me, I believe that intelligent design began when God envisioned me in his mind's eye and then decided to place me in an environment that would equip me to fulfill the very purpose he called me for. And so as I do this work and I continue to do this work, it is with that understanding that I do it. It is with that awareness that I continue to move forward doing this work in my own life and in the lives of those I'm called to touch. And so with that, I would like to, let's see if we have any comments here. Sharna Ganaway said, yes, this is good. Thank you, Sharna. So what I want to do next is I want to share with you all an excerpt from one of the classic books on inner child work that most of us either have read, most therapists have read. Monica, you've probably read it because you've read all the books, but it's Healing the Child Within by Charles Whitfield. This book is known as a classic in psychotherapy. It's one of the books that we read probably our first year in graduate school when we're learning what it means to do work with people, to help them to heal. And it is a book that I read many, many years ago. And I continue to go back to this book as I'm treating my patients, as I'm seeing clients for leadership coaching and all of the other things that I do. And so I want to share with you all an excerpt. And then what I'm going to do is read a part of a poem that's inside of the book that is the most powerful thing, I think, that anybody could ever hear when it talks about describing what happens when the inner child goes into hiding. Trauma is what brings the inner child to a place where they can no longer exist in their present reality. And when they recognize that, whether consciously or subconsciously, the inner child goes into hiding in order to survive. I'm going to read about the inner child so that everybody understands, well, what is this inner child they keep talking about? Reading from Healing the Child Within by Charles Whitfield. And I am going to start with page 10, read a couple paragraphs, and then I'm going over to the poem that I want everyone to hear. Our child within is expressive, assertive, and creative. It can be childlike in the highest, most mature and evolved sense of the word. It needs to play and to have fun, and yet it is vulnerable, perhaps because it is so open and trusting. It surrenders to itself, to others, and ultimately to the universe. And yet it is powerful in the true sense of power. It is healthily self-indulgent, taking pleasure in receiving and in being nurtured. Notice, receiving and in being nurtured. It is also open to that vast and mysterious part of us that we call our unconscious. It pays attention to the messages that we receive daily from the unconscious, such as dreams, struggles, and illness. By being real, it is free to grow. And while our false self forgets, our real self, or our inner child, remembers our oneness with others and with the universe. Yet for most of us, our real self is also our private self. Who knows why we choose not to share? Perhaps it is a fear of being hurt or being rejected. Some have estimated that we show our true self to others on average for about 15 minutes each day. 15 minutes, guys. For whatever reasons, we tend to keep that part of us private. Our child within flows naturally from the time we are born to the time we die, and during all of our times and transitions in between. We don't have to do anything to be our true self. It just is. If we simply let it be, it will express itself with no particular effort on our part. Indeed, any effort is usually in denying our awareness and expression of it. Any effort that we spend in being our true self, any effort to live our lives beyond what is true and honest and divine about who we are, that natural part of ourselves, any effort is in us denying it and denying the expression of it. I'm going to share with, well, I'll share that with you guys later, but I'm going to share the poem with you all now, just part of it, because I want you all to see just how powerful when the inner child goes into hiding, what happens in the life of an adult or a child who has been forced through their trauma to go into hiding. Please hear what I'm not saying. Don't be fooled by me. Don't be fooled by the face I wear, for I wear a mask, 1,000 masks that I'm afraid to take off, and none of them is me. Pretending is an art that's second nature with me, but don't be fooled. For God's sake, don't be fooled. I give you the permission that I'm secure, the impression that I'm secure, that all is sunny and unruffled with me, within as well as without, that confidence is my name and coolness is my game, that the water's calm and I'm in command, and that I need no one. But don't believe me. My surface may seem smooth, but my surface is my mask, ever varying and ever concealing. Beneath lies no complacence. Beneath lies confusion and fear and aloneness. But I hide this. I don't want anybody to know it. I panic at the thought of my weakness and fear being exposed. That's why I frantically create a mask to hide behind, a nonchalant, sophisticated facade to help me pretend to shield me from the glance that knows. But such a glance is precisely my salvation, my only hope, and I know it. That is, if it's followed by acceptance, if it's followed by love. It's the only thing that can liberate me from myself, from my own self-built prison walls, from the barriers I so painstakingly erect. It's the only thing that will assure me of what I can't assure myself, that I'm really worth something. But I don't tell you this. I don't dare. I'm afraid to. I'm afraid your glance will not be followed by acceptance, will not be followed by love. I'm afraid that you'll think less of me and that you'll laugh, and your laugh would kill me. I'm afraid that deep down I'm nothing, that I'm just no good, and that you will see this and reject me. So I play my game, my desperate pretending game, with a facade of assurance without and a trembling child within. So begins the glittering but empty parade of masks, and my life becomes a front. I idly chatter to you in the suave tones of surface talk. I tell you everything that's really nothing, and nothing of what's everything, of what's crying within me. So when I'm going through my routine, do not be fooled by what I'm saying. Please listen carefully and try to hear what I'm not saying, what I'd like to be able to say, what for survival I need to say, but what I can't say. Any comments about that reading from the panelists? That,
It is, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say, it just sums up the truth of what happens to us when trauma overtakes us and when there's no resolution to our trauma. The inner child who is free and spontaneous and creative and loving and accepting, that inner child hides because there's no space in her present reality. Go ahead, Shannon.
Well, it's such a powerful poem. And for anybody to be able to sit with it and try to put themselves in that place as though those were their words, it's earth moving.
Mhm.
And I've had clients that literally are like, okay, I can't get past the poem, right? We might be several sessions just on, I can't even get past this because it's resonating so much with regard to how it is that we hide and how much of our false self is what most people are most acquainted with or what we feel the most comfortable in being able to express. And again, that's just one excerpt of it, as you said. It
Right.
goes on. I mean, it's heavy, it's deep, but it's real. And the fact is, it's everyone's story. You can
Yes.
put any dynamic in there with any, flavor of events, but it's everyone's story. And it's that universal piece that I think is so appealing to be able to do this work for anyone.
Yes, absolutely.
And I agree with Shannon. I have not read the book, Christina. I have to read
I'm
this.
surprised.
I know. But after you read that excerpt, I had to take a deep breath because it is heavy. It was very heavy. And very relatable because part of my childhood trauma was that I was muted from expressing myself, from even saying anything. And for me, it transferred over to school. When I was in school, I would not raise my hand if I had a question. In turn, it impacted my schoolwork. So there's levels to the trauma that people don't even realize. The home environment is your foundation.
Yes.
And it's so important. And for children to, like myself and others, to experience trauma, it's just such a disadvantage. And that's why us talking about the inner child and the need to address the trauma and the pain is so important.
Yes. Thank you for that, Monica. Any other thoughts on that reading? And Lindsay, I'm sure, has gone over that reading multiple times with patients.
Yeah, I'd love to speak to the masks. I think that's such a testimony for the defenses that, yes, my clients, but also that I myself can identify. I have a strong perfectionistic part where I want to do everything just right, especially in my new role as being a parent and that responsibility. I want to do it perfect, right? Which is a mask for me to cover that insecurity and fear. So those defense mechanisms truly are our survival strategies. And that's how they live out in our lives. They cover. So that's always a true deep breath needed moment, those reminders.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you for that, Lindsay. We're going to go into our first question of the night for the panelists. And that first question is, why is inner child work so important? Why is it so important? People are, before we go to that, I do have a comment from here. Right, I'm sitting with this, says Maisha. It is heavy, deep, and real. Well put, Shannon and Monica. Great information. This is from Michelle Cooper. Great information, Christina. These masks that are worn by us are not the people looking at us and trying to identify who we are. It's for us wearing the mask, trying to not let anyone see who we really are at that time. Yes, thank you for that, Michelle. And so back to the question, why is inner child work so important?
So I think it's quintessential because first of all, it's you. So we're talking about you, the whole of yourself. And yes, you may be an evolved, mature adult, but your journey is lifelong. And so for me, the invitation is let's go back and look at what were the experiences of the inner child because they're still showing up. So it's not as though childhood is over and that part is chapter is closed and that's done. And now I'm just the adult that's living my life. You know, your
Yeah.
inner child, you are carrying forward with you. And those insecurities and those things that are left unhealed continue to bleed. And
Mhm.
they bleed out in your actual relationships, friendships, how you come into the world in terms of your interaction. So it's really not a question of why is it important. It actually is ever present. So whether we acknowledge it or know that it's important, it doesn't negate the fact that it's present with us, and we are likely suffering the impact of it by not dealing with it.
Yes, that's so true. Thank you for that, Shannon. Now let's move on. So now that we know why it's important to do our inner child work, let's talk a little bit about the signs that we need to do it. Some people are not aware of what they need to do, or what are the signs that I need to do my work?
Yeah, for me and what I see are when those defense mechanisms are acting out, that hyper controlled, when you're living your life to the beat of someone else, like the beat of someone else's or someone else's rhythm, like that's not mine, like that's not my desire, or that's not my expectation. So some of those things that come up, that's when I'm like, oh, we got some inner
Yeah.
child work to do, right? Like, who told you that? Who
Mm,
said that that had to go that way? Or what are you hanging on to that was, yeah, that what's the message? Where did that come from? How old is that? How
yeah.
old were you when someone told you that?
Yes.
When did you start believing that you were not good enough at this or that you couldn't do this? Let's go there.
Yes,
That's what comes up
absolutely.
for me.
And for me, the inner child issue that I dealt with in for my caregivers, I realized I was a people pleaser because the verbal abuse was tearing me down. So I needed to do something on a regular basis to try to get this person, these people to approve.
Yes.
So then a lot of my adulthood, I was living a life, not just with these people, but I found it carrying over to my other relationships of being a people pleaser. And
Yeah.
when I realized that, it was very refreshing to start doing the work on not being a people pleaser and address my own needs first before others.
Absolutely. That's similar to my own experience, Monica, just doing what is expected of me and not what will serve my own well-being. Oh, well, they expect me to do, so I'm gonna, this is what is expected, and never asking myself, well, what is it that you want and need? And that needless, wantless way of walking through life is what really steals our joy and steals our sense of identity. It steals our for me, it felt like it was stealing my soul, my mind, my will, and my emotions, because I was always focused on what was expected. And that was from growing up in a performance-based family of origin. So yeah, those are all great indicators that we need to start doing our inner child work when we're hyper reactive, like Lindsay was saying, defensive, when we are manipulative and controlling. Manipulation doesn't always look like someone being mean and overbearing. In fact, most of the time it looks like someone pretending to be helpless or needy in order to get their needs met, but doing it in a way where they don't ask directly to get their needs met. They act out in order to draw people in their weakness in to then meet their need. And so there's never an ownership of their need. It's all based in chronically unmet needs and people struggling over the course of their lives to verbalize, to articulate their needs, but most importantly, to sense and feel their own need, and then believe that they are worthy of having those needs met. Manipulation begins as an outgrowth of us not believing that we deserve to have our needs met. And so that's a sign when you're not able to ask for your needs to be met. You're scared to ask somebody for help. I still struggle with that. Even in preparing for this roundtable, I was like, I don't want to keep texting them. Oh, I don't want to tell them to do, oh, I want them to share it on social media, but I don't want to act like I don't want them to be over encumbered with doing something for me. And these are my friends. And yet I still struggle and have to check myself with, you think they don't want to support you? Like, you think they're not going to send a share, that's too much for them? No, it's not too much. And so those are all things that we have to continue to work on in our lives. And that is why the inner child work is forever work. Oh, one more thing before we go to the next one. Another sign that we need to do our inner child work. We're fawning. We're emotionally dishonest. Emotional dishonesty looks like you are overcome with unnatural praise and compliments for someone because you are afraid that either they're going to leave you or that they're going to reject you. And I've experienced this in my life over time from other people fawning, where it's, well, this feels uncomfortable. Like, this is unnatural and I can sense that it's unnatural. But the reason why people do it is so that they can avoid abandonment. They can survive, even though they're not in a survival situation because their childhood is over. But they're trying to survive something that has long past being a threat. And so they're operating in their present reality, which does not present the threat that was presented in their childhood. And they are presenting those behaviors, and that's why in therapy they call them maladaptive. The reason why they're called maladaptive is because if I were fawning in my family of origin because, say, my father was physically abusive, which please don't email me, my father was not physically abusive. But, and I'm just saying that for me, I'm not laughing if somebody's was, but I'm just saying, I know that there are people watching. I just don't want people reaching out saying, I didn't know your father was physically abusive. I'm giving an example. So if my father was physically abusive and I needed to be perfect, or I needed to fawn all over my father in order to ensure that he was not going to beat me or abuse me, yet now I'm in an environment where no one is abusive. That was adaptive for back then. It no longer serves me now because it is not adaptive to the current reality that I'm experiencing. And so that's another piece, emotional dishonesty. When you're fawning all over people, that is your effort to avoid rejection. That's why people in your life, you may experience people running from you before the relationship even starts, because you have gone into it with a sense of underlying desperation. People can sense that and they run. And so the very thing that you're fearing then becomes your reality. And it becomes a cycle, because after they run, then you ask yourself, what's wrong with me? I know I'm unworthy. I know I'm not wanted. I know I'm unlovable. And then you fawn again until you do your work. Yes.
I definitely can relate to that. I was going to share, as far as dating before I got married, not having the figure as a caregiver that was needed to instruct a young lady how to date. You go searching in the wrong way, you date the wrong people, and you become very needy. Yeah. And in my early 20s, I realized that I was needy.
Mhm.
because of the abandonment issues. So
Yeah.
once again, it goes back to why it's so important to address your inner child and realize all these things, because it helps you grow and become a better person. So that when you continue to date, you're not, causing these relationships to go away. Not saying that, I was the cause, but some people, like you said, they can sense that neediness and it's just too much, so once again, the abandonment issue, it just plays over in so many other relationships, especially when you're dating.
Absolutely. Thank you for that, Monica. Let's go to the second question of, actually the third question of the night. What gets in the way? This is my favorite part. I think it's Lindsay's too, but anyway, I'm just really excited because I love talking about what gets in the way. What gets in the way of doing the work, and why do we avoid it?
Yes, I would love to. I would love to speak to this. What gets in the way? I think because we get so good at our defense mechanisms, we learn to live in the discomfort of that space. Like we get comfortable with the discomfort and living in our defense mechanism, living in our masks, and that becomes our normal. You start to peel that stuff off, and people, especially those people closest to you, they're going to look at you. What are you doing?
Yes.
That's not how that didn't happen. They're the gaslighting and no, that's not what had happened. That is what had happened. This is my story. So relationships change. You may need to set boundaries, right?
Yes.
That's uncomfortable, especially when you're doing that inner child work. It probably does mean with some of those primary caregivers and those other significant people in your life. And that gets painful and uncomfortable. So that gets in the way. Deep.
I think Lindsay froze on us.
While we wait for Lindsay, I've also experienced, not so much for myself, but in a lot of people close to me, because, like I said, doing the work and you realize that it's so beneficial, people are really scared, because it can be painful to have to revisit the thoughts and the memories of your inner child. And for me, I know that's one of the major reasons why people choose not to do the work, because it literally is work.
Yes.
You're working on yourself. You're working on healing. Imagine you have a bed sore, a wound, and you decide not to treat it.
Whew.
It's just going to get worse and worse. Then it gets infected. And for some people, they actually have to have their foot there. You have to have it taken away. So why don't you do the work before that wound gets even worse?
Yes. Yes. Thank you, Monica. Lindsay, you said something that was about to be very powerful. You were like, deep, and then you went out.
I think it was that, yes, that pain it's exactly what Monica was just speaking. It was that it's such deeply stored pain and emotions, and we live a more comfortable life when we avoid that stuff. But exactly what Monica said, like, really, you really living your best life with all that, with that bed sore, that emotional bed sore that's eroding you from the inside? Oh, how are your relationships working out? Right? How you doing at work? How you doing on your dreams? Oh, that's good. All right. Well,
thank you for that. Yes. We have comments in the chat, in the Facebook Live. Shirley Jones says, unfortunately, as women, more so Christian women, we are taught, trained, conditioned to serve, even to our own detriment. This is in some ways served as almost a necessity of salvation. Ooh, Shirley. Yes, that is so true. That is so true. And Michelle says, people pleasing is something I suffered with for most of my life. Grateful for deliverance. Yes, Michelle, thank you. So let's move forward. We're going to go into the next question. So we've talked about why the inner child is so important. We've talked about what are the signs that I need to do inner child work and what gets in the way of doing it. And I don't see any questions in the live right now, so we're going to move forward. And I have a question that I'd like to ask here. And it is, here's one. What if I didn't have trauma in my childhood? From what I remember, my parents were wonderful. They never argued. I didn't have any problems as a child. I have a great job and a great marriage now. My husband and I don't argue either. My kids are all on the honor roll and excel in sports. My life is pretty much picture perfect. I have achieved so much in life. I mean, lots. Do I still need to do inner child work?
I would say that's a red flag. Like, flag right here. Yes.
Yes.
Because you have quantified your position and your possessions and your accomplishments. It's centered on performance, therefore you are perfect, right?
Mhm.
So that's negating you as being fully whole or human, because everyone makes mistakes. No one gets it right all the time. So that lens that says, I have to be able to check the box to say, I'm good, I'm good, I'm good, I'm good. That's indicative of something. And that's where you have to get curious to say, okay, well, really, what is the backstory here? Because that
Yes.
can't really be all that it is.
Absolutely. Any other comments for that first question? And then we'll move to the next one. Because Lindsay does have to jump off at around right at 5:15. So I want to make sure that we get some of these questions in so that she can participate in the answering of the questions as a clinician and as a human being, a person. I want to go to the second question. My childhood was so painful and difficult that I try not to think about it. Will I have to experience the same pain I did back then in order to do my inner child work?
I'd love to speak to this,
Yes, please
because
do.
definitely getting that willingness and consent to revisit this space should take some time. There should be readiness. There should be containment and self-care practices going on, and a secure relational space that they can lean into when you are doing this work. It needs to be the right time. So yes, I will say maybe it isn't the right time, right? And also, yes, because as the functional adult that you are today, you get to revisit that. Like, and we're not going back there. We're going to watch it like a movie. Right.
Yes.
And we're going to learn from it. And we're going to go back in there and be like a director and manipulate some stuff so that the message that you walk out of that movie is different than when that child walked out and from that scene. Right. So that that child doesn't grow up with what you believe now. So as the woman, the empowered and capable woman that you are today, we're going to revisit that. Yes. With a purpose and agenda. We are doing it different.
And
Absolutely.
I can also speak to that as someone that, has worked with therapy and trying to grow. My first clinician actually started that process, taking me way back to the beginning. And for me, there was some things that were, of course, painful to talk about. But like you said, Lindsay, the perspective and how you do it and how it's brought to your attention, it actually was insightful. And it helped me understand more of who I am, my authenticity of this is who Monica is. You're not that person that you were told as a child who you are, with all the words that were said to you and all the things that weren't done for you and the lack of nurturing. So I agree that it may be a little, for me as a person that experienced therapy, a little uncomfortable, but you understand yourself better. And that's the reward in doing the work.
Very good, Monica. Thank you for sharing that. Yes, it is uncomfortable, but it's worth it, right? I want to go on to the final question of the night, and that is, if I wanted to begin doing the work, where would I begin?
If it's okay, I would like to go first because I do have to
I
take
know.
take my daughter to an event. So
Yes.
I think start wherever you can. That there really is no wrong place to start, whether that's you pick up this book that Christina read from, Healing the Child from Within, whether you decide to get a professional facilitator to do this work, whether you decide to have a friend watch this and start to talk about your childhood. Okay. The one thing that I wanted to share tonight, I wrote it down, and I would regret it if I didn't, is one of the most powerful exercises that was given to me as a client. I'm going to be really vulnerable with you guys. She told me to pick out a picture of myself as a child from a time that I remember, like being in it, in the thick of those messages. And she told me to write a letter to that little girl. And
Yes.
that was good work. It was good work. It started a conversation with that part of me that brought so much healing. I was able to meet so many needs for her that didn't get met. She was able to tell me things that in that voice and at that time, it was incredibly powerful. It would just be letters back and forth, and it was brilliant work. And I think that's something that anyone watching this video could be inspired to do, to revisit some of those times and tell her what you want her to know, like what I wish that she knew. You're strong and you can do this, and there's nothing wrong with you. Those big feelings you got, they are going to be your superpower, so I apologize. I do have to end it. So
we want to thank you, Lindsay Young, for joining us for the I Remember Her Roundtable. Your contribution has been invaluable today, and I hope to have you on for our next roundtable that is coming up hopefully sometime soon. But enjoy your daughter tonight, and we'll talk soon.
Yes, I will get carpool next time.
Okay.
Thank you guys so much. Take care.
That example that Lindsay just used is something that is just so very powerful. I've had some clients to bring in those photos of themselves, and it's so interesting. The ones that they choose it's very messaged. It was a picture taken at her grandmother's house, and it resonated with her because grandma's house was where she felt safest.
Right.
So it's a lot of messaging that you can give to yourself with regard to your experiences.
Absolutely. So definitely doing that type of work, narrative work, is what we call it in therapy, but it's the journaling, the letter writing, and really just getting in touch through writing, articulating, processing it verbally, but also, of course, reading books that will help to enlighten you about your journey, and also maybe taking a course that's related to inner child work. And I think that's a perfect segue into part of the reason why we're having this I Remember Her Roundtable is that I am offering a course entitled I Remember Her, 7 Steps to Reclaiming Your Inner Child and Unlocking the Door to Your Destiny. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen just briefly here. Okay. And it looks like I'm disabled here. But I would like to share my screen. And that course that I'm developing and that will launch on this coming Wednesday, September 22nd, is for anyone who would like to begin the work of healing and restoring and recovering and rescuing the inner child within them so that they can live fully in their destiny, the destiny that we talked about earlier today, the destiny that was planned for you by your creator when and before he knitted you together in your mother's womb. There are activities that you can do, processes that you can experience that will help you to reconnect with your inner child and to really get to where you're going in your life. If you're feeling stuck, if you're feeling just disconnected in any way, that you will benefit from this class, because in my masterclass, I talk about it from the beginning to the end, what it looked like in the beginning. There are lots of workbook activities that you will be able to do in that process, and you'll be able to get what you need from it so that you can move forward with your life. It's called I Remember Her: 7 Steps to Reclaiming Your Inner Child and Unlocking the Door to Your Destiny. The course is primarily for women, and it is designed specifically for women who are seeking to uncover the parts of themselves that they have rejected or abandoned or betrayed over the years, and to bring back that part of themselves so that they can operate in wholeness in their lives, their work, and their relationship. You can find out more information and get information about when the class launches through ChristinaSanford.com/masterclass. I wanted to share my screen. There we go. Okay, and just to give you some information on this course, and it's the I Remember Her Masterclass, 7 Steps to Reclaiming Your Inner Child and Unlocking the Door to Your Destiny. If you want more information about this course or have questions about today's roundtable, please feel free to email me at connect@ChristinaSanford.com. connect@ChristinaSanford.com. If you would like to learn more about the masterclass and sign up for email updates and specific inspired content around the masterclass that I'm offering, you can go to ChristinaSanford.com/masterclass. I just want to go ahead and thank everyone who was on the panel today. I want to thank Shannon Martin, Lindsay Young, and Monica O'D for offering their gifts of knowledge and their gifts of experience and their passion for the work that not only that they are doing, but the work that they want to see other people do so that the world and humanity can heal from the experience that we have, the human experience that we all have to endure in this life. And so Shannon, thank you. Monica, thank you. Lindsay, thank you. And I also want to thank our Facebook live audience tonight for contributing your thoughts, your questions, your comments to tonight's conversation. We will have more of these conversations moving forward. So stay tuned for events through ChristinaSanford.com. I want to thank our Catchy Media team who has been assisting throughout this entire roundtable, making sure that we are technically sound and that things are going smoothly. I'm going to take final words from our panelists and then we're going to close out. Monica, what would be your final word tonight, the final statement tonight for our audience?
My final statement would be that I want each person listening that might have the work to do to see the journey of healing as self-love. And as I stated in my bio, it's just the greatest gift that you will ever give yourself. It'll improve your relationships at work, your marriages, your sisters, your brothers. So take the time to think about what we said this evening and strongly consider reaching out to one of the avenues that Christina shared with you so that you can begin your journey, because like I said, it might be a little hard in the beginning, but you will feel so refreshed and free once you do the work. Trust me.
Thank you, Monica. Shannon, final words for the night.
Well, it's really something that Monica already spoke to just by framing it, that it's the gift that you give yourself. So often, especially with childhood traumas, we are conditioned to believe that something, someone from somewhere is going to come and rescue and save us. When
Yes.
you really begin this work, what you find, there's a plot twist. You are the hero of your own story. You have been waiting for you all this time. And that is the gift. And that's why it's so profound. That's why it's so unique to every single person, because it's for you. And
Yes.
so it's a just, really the invitation is from you to you.
Mhm. Mm. So powerful, so powerful. Thank you so much to our panelists. Thank you to the Facebook Live community. Again, if you have questions that you need answered about the roundtable or even about the masterclass, specific questions, feel free to contact me at connect@christinasanford.com. connect@christinasanford.com. If you want more information about the masterclass launch. And again, the masterclass title is I Remember Her, 7 Steps to Reclaiming Your Inner Child and Unlocking the Door to Your Destiny. You're going to go to christinasanford.com/masterclass. christinasanford.com/masterclass. Thanks again, everyone, for joining us. Stay inspired.